When it comes to racing games, Forza and Xbox go hand in hand. Both Motorsport and Horizon are synonymous with the platform itself, but it wasn't always like this. The first Forza game didn't launch until 2005, at the end of the original Xbox's lifespan. Microsoft in this era, being a newcomer, was throwing everything at the wall and seeing what would stick. They funded a bunch of exclusive titles for the system, a good portion of them being racing games. And today, I'm going to go through every single one. Did Forza deserve to come out on top, or is there some hidden brilliance in here? Time to find out. Now, some ground rules before we get going. I'm only covering true exclusives, meaning games that are only playable on Xbox. So, no Crazy Taxi 3, Rallisport Challenge 1, etc. Alright, first game. Okay, hear me out. Wave Race is a racing game. Twisted Metal is grouped in with the genre. So surely when you combine the two you still get a racing game, right? I mean, I did do a race in it. Bloodwake was a launch title for the system in Europe. It's an aquatic combat game, split into different areas with missions varying from shoot enemy boats, shoot things on land, to shoot enemy boats while defending a very large boat. You don't have to worry so much about aiming, so long as you're facing towards an enemy, the guns will auto lock on. And you have
infinite ammo.
What isn't infinite is your rockets and torpedoes. Destroying enemy crafts drops extra ammo as well as health, which you're gonna want. Gameplay loop is solid and it is simple fun, though some enemies take way too long to kill and you may find yourself just circling around until their health bar depletes. There's also an arcade mode where you can deathmatch against AI or friends if you have some of those. You will get better boats as you progress through the levels, and if you like deep and interesting narratives, there is a narrative in the game, giving context to the missions. And that's Bloodwake. Is this a racing game? Well, if Twisted Metal is, then yesn't. Hey you, what language do you speak? Me? Well, I only know default Xbox. We're still doing water sports with this one.
Nani?
But for a seemingly unassuming jet ski racer, Carve is genuinely something you need to play if you have an Xbox, or at least try and emulate it. The track design is excellent, both visually diverse and challenging as you progress through its tournaments. From the East Pole to Italy to that one bit of the map in Forza Horizon 3, Carve is always keeping things fresh, and this extends to its core gameplay. You have a boost like a lot of other arcade racers, but it's a mix of SSX and Hot Pursuit 2010. You have to do tricks either on the surface or in the air to get a boost, but once the trick is finished, you're zooming. A boost at the wrong angle or wrong part of the track can send you careening into a wall or missing a checkpoint. Successful tricks also get you points, and you can't just spam the same tricks over and over, because repeating a trick won't get you any boost. Early on, you'll be pausing a lot to check the trick list, but just like in any game with a combo system, they slowly become muscle memory. This game also has a very interesting risk versus reward system, as there are a certain number of checkpoints you're allowed to miss. And if you, say, go on the opposite side of one, you'll gain access to a shortcut. This marriage of game and level design means that every lap you're having to make split-second decisions, which keeps you engaged. Speaking of game design, if you're someone who is mad at Unbound's limited restarts, well, you gotta get good, because it's the same with Carve. There are only so many times you can repeat a race in a championship before you have to do the whole thing over. Can this be considered frustrating? Absolutely. Does it make you want to master the tracks and perfect your boosts? Absolutely. Also, is it just me, or is this game really pretty? The more tricks you do during a race eventually charges up a super boost, which can be manually activated whenever you deem fit. And as you progress through the game, you unlock some fun bonuses as well, like the classic Big Head mode. I have no idea what reviewers at the time were smoking or what they were expecting out of this game. Maybe it was promised that this would be the most revolutionary, best game ever made, and if that's the case, then yeah, it didn't deliver. But Carve is genuinely great fun, challenging, and visually impressive. It's a game I never would have thought to check out just looking at its box art and seeing that non-descriptive name, but it became something I'll now be going back to. Surprised to see this so soon? Yeah, I'm going through these in the order that I played them, and Forza is labeled as CDX on my Xbox for some reason. Now, I gotta come clean. I've never been a Motorsport fan, or really even a Horizon fan. Now, I like the first Horizon, mind you. Despite playing literally every single entry apart from the first Motorsport, Forza has never been something I desired to play, compared to Grid, Toka, Gran Turismo, or heck even Shift. Unless it was to kill Black Panther.
But I thought, no way! I am not getting beat by an ice setter! No!
Putting that aside, from the start, I was impressed with the starter cars on offer here. It shows the Eagle talent and did the first 2 races on Fujimi Kaido. Then, after doing 2 races, the game threw a Celica at me. A Celica that was 2 performance classes higher than the car I just bought. Weird, okay, ignoring that. I did a few other races, and I gotta say, I like the track variety on offer here. It's a healthy mix of fictional and real-world circuits, with the fictional tracks being incredibly fun to drive on. Forza Motorsport to me as a franchise has always been characterized by the understeer present in all cars at most speeds. Cars in the first game are livelier, and basically skid through most corners. Definitely less realistic, but felt more responsive than the cars in the newest Motorsport, to me at least. Feel free to tell me why I'm wrong about Forza's handling in the comments. The customization has a leg up over later entries, with a surprisingly high amount of parts available, especially for something like this Talon, and even multiple bits of Forza Aero. And while we're on the cars, some of the models like this Delta just have some pretty bizarre proportions. But hey, it was early days for the series. Surely future models would be built from the ground up, and these weird inaccurate models would become a footnote in the history books. As I was making my way through the campaign, something became very clear. Forza Motorsport is desperate for you to like it. You're getting cars constantly. When I decided to use the aforementioned Celica, I did 2 races in a 3-race championship, and got a car because my affinity level with this brand was raised. Then, after I did the 3rd race in the series, I got another car. Why? What is the point in having any sort of economy in this game if I'm just going to be rewarded for doing the bare minimum? I hate how modern Horizon games throw cars at you, and it's a shame to see that the issue starts at the very foundation of the franchise. I will say, if you are a Forza fan, I think the first Motorsport is something worth checking out, if only for the unique tracks, cars, and customization which weren't present on later entries. There's definitely stuff for you here.
11点
Oh no, you bought an Xbox and want to play the hot new Stuntman game? Well, don't worry, because I Imagine Interactive has you covered. This is the first game developed by the studio, and it doesn't entirely feel like it. The main difference between Chase and Stuntman is the way you have to actually complete these stunts. If you're familiar with Stuntman, you may remember both games required you to string together actions during a level, with you only allowed to miss a set number of actions before you'd have to reset the whole level. Chase is a bit different. While you do stuff to complete the stage within a certain time frame, you don't have to do everything in one go. You will have to complete most, if not all, objectives in a stage to unlock further levels, but you can just focus on only doing 1 or 2 specific actions during a run. Chase very much just lets you play at your own pace. Once you complete an objective, that progress is carried through subsequent runs. If the levels were boring or unfun to navigate in, this would be a problem, but each movie you play through is a unique setup and atmosphere. Now there won't be meteors falling from the sky, but it follows the first Stuntman game's more grounded productions. Comparing it directly to Stuntman shows 2 sides of the same coin. Where Stuntman demands perfection from you, Chase lets you play at your own pace. It's not really better or worse than its main rival, just a different take on the same concept. One of the neat features you have in this game is air control. You can do barrel rolls or front flips, either for your own amusement, or more likely just to complete a specific objective. Some of the missions do shake things up, such as having to keep close to another actor, wait for an AI to shoot a car, and you can discover hidden bonuses within the stages. And as far as bonus content, there's an arena which basically allows you to do a bunch of tricks like it's Tony Hawk, and good old bus jumping. Chase isn't as challenging as the first Stuntman, nor is it as bombastic as Ignition. This subgenre is literally just 3 games, and I'm happy to say Chase holds its own. Reflections already had 2 driver games under their belt, and Chase was from a team of complete newcomers. It's a shame that a sequel never came to be. Definitely give this game a shot if you're new to this subgenre, or have mastered both Stuntman games already. What happens when you take away the one distinguishing characteristic from a racing game with not so great handling? You just get a bland, boring game in its place. Group S Challenge is the second and last racing game Capcom would develop. The car list is mostly stuff you would have seen before, but it's not too bad. Once you get into a race, you realize that the default camera position is way too low. Fortunately, there's other angles available. Then you'll get to grips with the AI, which does not care about you. The AI in this game have the right of way. If they want to move into the racing line or brake late, they will go through you. And don't try to bully them back, because that's a fight you're not gonna win. The whole color palette of this game is very muted and bland, and there's no sense of speed whatsoever. What doesn't help this issue is that I'm fairly confident that this game is just like, slow. Like it's running at 25 FPS instead of 30. And this isn't a PAL copy. There's no discernible handling characteristics between any car. They all want to drift through corners no matter if they're front wheel drive or if you're going 5 miles per hour. However, there is one attempt at innovation here, a mode where you just follow this blue line. You get paid for it. Okay, there is one single positive in this game, and that's a camera mode that lets you look at your car through the replay camera while you race. That's neat, actually wouldn't mind that in other games. Group S Challenge just isn't fun to play. It feels slow, it's visually disinteresting, and there's only 3 tracks. Yeah, there are multiple layouts, but by the time it was released you had TOCA and PGR on the same platform as alternatives. There's nothing that Group S does that's unique or interesting to make it worth playing, both when it came out and especially today.
10点中9点です。
from one of the worst exclusives to one of the best. First things first, Double Steel the Second Clash is 100% a must play. It's a mission-based driving game that is not only console exclusive, but Japan exclusive. The weird thing is that it's entirely in English, with no Japanese language option whatsoever. It's completely packed with content too. The game is split into two sections: the story mode, comprised of 20 missions, which mostly exist to justify the set pieces, and the free mode, which gives you even more to do. Missions can range from reaching landmarks in time, smashing into trains, stopping fleeing vehicles, and murder. You're an agent of chaos in this game, and can traffic check any car or obstacle in your way, all in the name of justice. There's a whole open world of Chicago for you to explore, at your own risk, full of hidden car parts, which once you collect 5 of, unlocks new vehicles for you to play with. The open world missions range from simple stuff such as point-to-point racing, pizza delivery, and some not so simple. It is absolutely a shame that this game never became backwards compatible, considering Microsoft published it, and they own the IP. Second Clash is a treasure trove of fun, and it's an absolute must-play on the system. Remember Need for Speed Most Wanted's FMV cutscenes? Well, Genki beat Black Box to the punch. Yeah, that Genki. One's famous for Phantom Crash. This is another game that Microsoft owns, and it's kinda wild. Maximum Chase feels like it's ripped straight out of the arcade. The only mode available is the story mode, where you play as a cop that plays by his own rules. This woman just hops into your car, and then people start shooting at you. I'm pretty sure this actress was paid per screen. Aya Brea, she is not. The plot revolves around bioterrorism or something, and there's two forms of gameplay. Driving, which either has you being chased by enemies through various parts of LA and Texas, and shooting, which is straight up an arcade light game. The shooting segments in particular get pretty difficult if you don't channel your inner Dan Smith. Charge shots are a one-hit KO, and you're gonna wanna land them. Each shooting section ends with a boss fight, including one with a weaponized semi. Yeah, you're not gonna wanna cut that off on the highway. The driving sections aren't anything to write home about. The handling does its job. You do get to drive and beat up a selection of licensed vehicles, including the worst car in the world. But what you're really here for are the cutscenes.
Damn, I just washed my car.
For like the $3 that I paid for this game, it's worth it. But it is absolutely not worth the full retail $60 that was charged when it was new, because it's only an hour long. There is some replay value here, given that you can take whatever car you want into previous stages once you beat the game, but come on, that's not that much. Maximum Chase is from the era where Microsoft was experimenting and seeing what would stick. And despite its short runtime, for me, it absolutely does. It's totally worth playing just for some pure arcade fun and ADR-laden cutscenes. Oops, we're going out of play order again here, as I completely forgot that I played this game. I actually didn't take any notes on it, so let's just get going. Are you a Sonic R fan? Well, here's your spiritual successor. Mad Dash Racing has you running through its courses. There's multiple paths you can take to get to the end of each stage, although they always converge back into a singular funnel before branching off again. One of the interesting things that this game does is that each stage has obstacles that you need to get through, such as swimming, which has you rotate the right stick, or doing this climbing thing, I don't know what it's called, and there's an award-worthy story here from the writers of Gex.
Oh, is it Gex Night? I love Gex Night.
Basically, you gotta run because this guy says so, and yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about this one. It's for literal children. And I'm not a child. I play real games, like Dead or Alive Extreme, and get rejected by virtual women. Midtown Madness 3 is anything but mid. More like Littown Madness, am I right?
Shut the fuck up.
Now if you're unfamiliar with the series, you might be wondering why the first two games aren't before this one. Well, that's because the first two released on the PC before Xbox was even a thing. Microsoft weren't complete newcomers to the gaming scene. Third and final entry would have a new developer, from Angel Studios who made Midnight Club, to DICE. Yeah, that DICE. The same studio behind the timeless Mirror's Edge. This is a mission-based driving game, a runabout clone if you will. And there is so much for you to do here. You have two cities, Paris and DC. You can explore either at your leisure and free roam, and find new paint jobs for the vehicles you've unlocked. Better be sure to remember where these spray cans are though, because say you're in a Lotus Esprit, you can't collect a paint job for an ambulance in it, you gotta bring the overpriced Uber to the same spot. The mission mode has you as an undercover agent getting various jobs. Each city has its own unique storyline for you to follow. The Paris story has you following Swedish terrorists, or at least I think they're terrorists, and the DC story has you investigating the Italian mafia. The missions in each scenario range from pizza delivery, to rent-a-car driver, to stuntman, to just a straight-up spy. And each job you take has some unique gameplay element to keep things fresh. From running for your life, picking up and delivering multiple cars within a time limit, and stunting of course for the stunt driver job, or just unordered checkpoint races / delivery missions. That's just a few. These missions, however, would not be nearly as fun if it weren't for the level design in both cities. They each have properly narrow roads, and you're going to be weaving through traffic and other obstacles. There's also a fair amount of shortcuts you'll discover as you continue to play, which will come in handy on the harder missions. The game has a pretty good sense of humor too. Nothing laugh out loud, but a good amount of nose exhales, which helps when you have a skill issue. Also, weird thing to mention, but look at the speedometer. Every other racing game I can think of has an analog tack but a digital speedo. This game does the opposite. That's neat. Because Midtown Madness originated as a PC franchise, a lot of fans of the first two games haven't played this one. And if you're one of them, you need to play the third entry. This game is the perfect mix of challenge and fun, and there's plenty for you to sink your teeth into. And if you have Insignia, you can even get online nowadays and play the multiplayer modes. However, I did not in this video, sadly. Definitely something you're gonna have to organize with the community. It really is a shame Midtown Madness didn't continue after this entry. It absolutely still has its place within the genre, but you know how it is. Executives see a car and they think, oh, racing game, they must all be the exact same. Anyways, play Midtown Madness 3. Here we go, it's kudos time. If you don't know about PGR, well, this was the arcade racer before Horizon was even a thought. Still hoping for Japan on Horizon 6? Well, it's here in Project Gotham Racing. A launch title for the system running at a silky smooth 60 FPS. PGR is the definition of easy to learn, hard to master. You can start playing and have a great time, but if you want to dominate and push yourself, then the challenge is right there waiting for you. PGR is also the first, excluding its spiritual predecessor, Metropolis Street Racer, or one of the first games with a scoring system. It's not just about how fast you drive, it's about how stylish. Chaining together overtakes, getting up on two wheels, fast sectors, power sliding through corners, though it's not faster to do this, all earn kudos, which unlock more events. You can increase or lower the difficulty too. Like I said, you can pick up and leisurely play, push yourself further and further. In the first game, there's only 3 locations, like in Group S Challenge earlier in the video, but there's far more routes for you to drive on, and there's an actual sense of speed. What makes PGR's tracks interesting is how they captured the street circuits. Roads are uneven, they have bumps and undulations, which will upset your car at high speeds when you're not careful. And some of these corners get properly tight too. Learning the track and learning your car is key. And just to think, the series would only get better from its first outing. So, switching over to PGR 2, how do you improve on such a strong first outing? More cars, more locations, more tracks, more weather? The game is more of an evolution, less so revolution, but the original is fantastic, so it doesn't feel cheap. The increased car list and car variety means that there's even more events for you to get to, and the medal system keeps you coming back to achieve faster and faster times and higher kudos. PGR 2 also has a really cool showroom feature where you can walk around and look at and test drive the cars that you've unlocked. Both games have event variety. From cone challenges, which is kind of like autocross, and you're going to want to try and keep your score chain going between gates, passing challenges, time attack. Both entries have enough to keep you occupied and make you use different skill sets. Which one should you play? Well, if you're looking for an online experience, then PGR 2. It also has the first game beat in the cars and track department, but that doesn't quite make the first game obsolete. Both games, despite being similar at a base level, feel different in the hand, in a way that just doesn't come across in video. Most of the layouts in PGR 1 are straight from Metropolis Street Racer, but I can't drive them like in MSR. PGR 2 is objectively better than 1, and well worth your time. But much like how PGR 4 is objectively better than 3, you really should play the games yourself to feel the difference. Basically, what I'm saying is, play PGR. They deserve their praise in their heyday, and still deserve your time today. The developers of Swedish Touring Car Championship DICE are back at it again with Rallisport Challenge 2. First things first, this is not a sim, this is Sega Rally. The freedom of being an arcade rally experience allows Rallisport Challenge 2 to have some really fun and creative stages. Now it's nothing wacky, but there is a good amount of environment variety on offer here. RC2 reminds me a lot of the Dirt series actually, in that it offers multiple types of off-road racing, not just rally itself. Hill climbs, ice racing, rallycross, though weirdly there's no Joker laps in rallycross, and crossover races. Hill climbs also aren't very hilly, but the stages are still nice. RC2 gives you a bunch of different machines to unlock, and multiple championships to progress through, with each increasing in difficulty. It's not hard to see why this became a fan favorite. The handling is great and so is the damage model. In fact, it's so good there's a special camera so you can look at it in action when you have a skill issue. Apart from assisting on Hot Pursuit 2010, this is the last racing game DICE would develop. And you know what? What a final outing. If you're a fan of the older Dirt games and haven't checked this out yet, then add it to your backlog. It's a must play on the system. Now here's another Japanese exclusive, Touge R from the venerated Atlas. Yeah, you heard that right. The Trauma Center studio. Unfortunately, Touge and drifting aren't really my areas when it comes to racing, but I gave this game a fair shake. Getting started in the Carrozzeria mode, you have a set number of funds to pick your first starter car, and there's some pretty neat stuff in here. Obviously, being a Touge game, the handling encourages you to drift, though to me it kind of just felt a little off. Definitely something much like real drifting, you're gonna have to sink time into to perfect. What's strange about this game is that it's not point-based, nor do you really have to do any drifting. You're racing in this game. Hi, Future Furzy interjecting with some random COD gameplay. I realize that Touge isn't only a solo thing, I was just expecting more 1v1s, time trial, or score attack type gameplay. Okay, back to past Furzy. The championships also aren't point-based, it's wins or nothing here. And the few stages that are present are pretty good, with you able to go uphill, downhill, or even just free roam around the track. There is no damage model present in this game, but if you're like me, with the amount you're crashing into the wall, that's probably a good thing. Something that stood out to me compared to, say, Tokyo Extreme Racer Drift, is that there's actually not a lot to do here. There's no characters, license challenges, sponsor system, different modes with progression. It's just straight up Touge racing, which may be exactly what you want. There is car upgrades though, or at least I hope these were car upgrades, but no visual mods for your car. Touge R is just a hard game for me to form any sort of opinion on, just because I'm unfamiliar with this subgenre as a whole. I recognize that its pared back experience may be a strength, but the content is lacking compared to other drift games I've played or have seen in this subgenre. If it looks cool to you, maybe check it out. Pepsi Man, Sneak King, Chex Quest. We're entering the world of advert games with Volvo Drive for Life. Released in 2005, either the same month as the Xbox 360 or a couple months before it, Drive for Life, like most advert games, isn't exactly realistic. The game promotes 3 vehicles from the 2005 model year, the S40, XC90, and S60R. Checking out the S40 first, you're doing a PGR style gate challenge on a slick track, with you having to complete it under the time limit. And once that's done, you can spec your car. Then you hit the PCH and race towards the Volvo HQ. And honestly, this isn't a bad track. There's traffic you need to avoid, the rain actually affects your vehicle, and there's multiple routes and stuff happening along those routes. It's surprisingly alive. Once you complete this, you get a score that doesn't matter, apart from bragging rights to your friends about your Volvo Drive for Life medals. Next, the XC90 missions start out with a moose test, where you have to smash into, avoid the meese, then you do some off-roading. This also isn't a bad stage, though far less lively than the S40 one, apart from this happening. And finally, the Volvo S60R. This one challenges you to pass another vehicle on a soaking wet test track without traction control, after which you just do 3 solo laps of this racetrack. And that's all the driving in this driving game. You can also get more information about the vehicles in the game, and view crash tests, but that's it. As a free game, honestly, it could have been far worse. Yaris exists. Alright, going out of play order for the final time to cover the next 2 games, as honestly, I didn't want to end the video with them. Furious Karting is a kart racer in the literal sense. You have a selection of characters to choose from which each get their own unique backstory for why they're racing, like it's Mortal Kombat or something. The tracks in this game, mimicking real life go-kart circuits, are short, but you do get more laps than your typical racing game. Also, you can just straight up punch other racers, which affects your karma, though I'm not exactly sure what this does apart from make the AI more likely to hit you back. Maybe it also affects the power-ups you get. Which, yeah, this game also has power-ups, but only a couple spawn periodically, and of the 2 I only saw a chicken, and whatever this does, and then I couldn't actually play the game anymore. As it turned out, the disc that I have is damaged, and I can't progress through the championship, or load this track, which is strange considering that this looks like the same level that the tutorial I did was in, but it just didn't work. Though one final positive, it does have a cockpit view, and that's all I'm able to say about this one, unfortunately. This game sucks.
10点中15点
It finally happened. Someone clicked on Sega GT 2002 instead of Jet Set Radio Future on that combo disc. This is the sequel to the Dreamcast exclusive Sega GT, and is the last entry in the series. Sort of. Getting started, you select a starter car per usual, no used cars, but there is a used parts shop curiously. We'll get to that one in a minute. Once you pick your ride, you're into the main campaign, and from the start you realize that the handling is definitely Simcade. Not quite at a Gran Turismo level, but you still need to mind your braking zones and apexes. The tracks in this game are pretty good. Not outlandish like other Sega racers, but more so in line with the later Sega World Drivers' Championship. However, unfortunately there's only 5 of them. You do get a drag strip and a snow circuit, but for the most part you're racing on these 5 tracks over and over, which really detracts from the game, because the racing itself is fun. The AI puts up a decent fight, and there is a sense of progression here. You will get reward cars every so often, but they're either on the same level or just slightly better than what you already have, but not so much better that some upgrades can't bring your existing car up, should you choose to keep it. Speaking of the upgrades, that used part shop. Want more performance for your car but are strapped on cash? Well, used parts exist, but come with the risk of failure, and they will fail if you don't keep it with proper maintenance, because your car takes wear after every race. Suspension, brakes, and more will need to be periodically fixed or replaced, and you have to repair damage incurred during races. This, for me, honestly really helps provide a sense of ownership over your car. Another thing I like about this upgrade system is that you can actually feel the upgrades. For instance, just look at the body roll on this 11 without suspension upgrades, and with those suspension upgrades. The game does try to overcome its lack of tracks with varied game modes, such as the more specific challenge races, and a historic mode where you take one car from the 1960s and progress through the next 4 decades of automotive history, with each chapter giving you some information on what was going on at the time. The interesting thing about this mode is that your finishing position gives you a varying amount of points, which you can then spend on one particular upgrade per chapter. Completing this mode unlocks more cars for you to use in free play, so there's a reason to come back to it. License tests are also present here, though they work a little differently, as after you complete a group of races, you then need to complete a hot lap to unlock the next series of events. Less so a license test, and more so a challenge to see if you're good enough to keep playing the game. Sega GT 2002 is a lot of fun. Despite the small track list, the added gameplay surrounding your cars kept me engaged, wanting to take it as far as I could, then start the process all over again with an even better car. This game will get a pseudo sequel titled Sega GT Online, with more tracks and time of day. Though I discovered way too late that despite the name, the game isn't online only. It has all of the content of 2002, just with those extra tracks, features, and an altered car list. 2002 was already a recommendation from me, but online makes this entry a must play. No, wrong Apex. There we go. You want to talk about hidden gems? Well, here is the ultimate hidden gem. Apex, or Racing Evoluzione if you want to get European about this, was released in 2003 and developed by Milestone, who did Australian Idol Sing, and the recent Hot Wheels Unleashed games. What sets Apex apart is that you straight up make your own cars. The game starts with you and this dude exploring an old warehouse, where you then find some concept car schematics. From here, you choose which one you want to build, and apparently only takes a couple months for one dude to build a whole ass car. After that, you're racing, and my god do you have tracks in this game. The locations are varied even early on, and this will continue as you progress through the campaign. The handling is a little bit twitchy and sensitive, but it's not uncontrollable. Once you adapt to its handling style, it's not like you're fighting the car or the physics system. Apex's progression is pretty interesting, as wins aren't mandatory, just highly recommended, as wins on Sunday means sales on Monday, because this isn't just a one-off prototype. You're running a car company, complete with your own name, logo, and staff. Now it's not as deep as the later F1 games or WRC, but it is nice to see your base of operations slowly but surely expand. There's also special races that you do have to win that helps boost your brand awareness and popularity. Your car also evolves too, with faster and faster specs developed as you keep playing.
But wait! There's more!
As your company expands, you can then go back and develop one of the other roadsters you had the option for at the start of the game, or develop a higher tier of car, which will also then get better and better versions of it developed. It's a watertight gameplay loop, always giving you something to work towards, and this again is helped by the track variety. And those tracks themselves evolve a little too, with your brand appearing on advertisements surrounding the track the more popular it becomes. It really is something special to see this fictional car you grow attached to beat out real-world licensed vehicles, especially when it's a challenge. And let me tell you, wins are not guaranteed, especially later in the game, because the cars you develop do have their own specialties. If you want to win on the top speed circuits, well, you're going to need to have developed a car with a high top speed. Even for balanced vehicles, or those developed for tight, twisty turns, you will have to fight against the AI, and they're willing to be a little dirty to stop you. Something that I value in racing games is variety in game modes, and if I'm going to give out one negative, it's the fact that Apex doesn't have that, but the framing around its single player, the progression, and those tracks more than make up for that. It's an absolute crime that Apex got buried by history. Much like Carve, The nondescriptive name and unassuming box art doesn't tell you much about the game that's hiding within the disc. I guess 4-letter racing games only works for Codemasters. Apex is a fun, well thought out, and executed breath of fresh air. Not only today, but in an era when racing games were at their peak. Apex is 100% a must play. In fact, if you've made it this far and you're only gonna play one original Xbox racing game, then Apex would be one of my first recommendations. And that was every single original Xbox exclusive racing game. But to answer the question I asked at the start, did Forza deserve to come out on top? Well, I see why it did. It's the most palatable, broad-reaching experience, and doesn't really have any outstanding issues unless you just don't like having cars thrown at you. But the classics and other games simply forgotten to time are still worth playing, and there is in fact some hidden brilliance in here.
Sunny, you're licking the car!
She no best friends in the whole world. On the mood board, she's an install. And she dressed in really cute clothes. Kawaii like when in Tokyo.